Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 160. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us on this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Appreciate Josh Carney and Ross McCorkle filling in on the Monday show. Not a lot of Steelers news today, but plenty of sports news in general. The U.S. in their World Cup bid is over. Ryan O'Hearn sets a Pirates record with 10 RBIs and probably other stuff going on. So, Dave, how you doing? Thanks for being back with me.
Yeah, welcome back, and hope you enjoyed your jaunt away. I think it was about a 4-hour drive. You said I got to hear about this smorgasbord that you went to and all like that. Now, look, I think you're along the lines of me. I'm a very picky eater, and I think you are as well too. And I think there are certain things that you can't have because of diet restrictions and all like that. So, give us a rundown, real quick of that of that smorgasbord place.
Yeah, it's the largest buffet in the United States. Shady Maples out there in East Earl, Lancaster area in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm not a picky eater, but my body makes me be a picky eater with some dietary restrictions. But a lot of fun, good time, lived up to the billing, I think. So just a fun little trip with the family before training camp starts up. So that's what I got.
What are you, a meat and vegetables kind of guy, or I imagine they had tons of desserts as well too, huh?
Yeah, I can't do desserts. It's one of the things I can't
Uh,
do. But yeah, meat and potatoes kind of guy through and through. So that was a lot of what I had. But yeah, a lot of fun. Just kind of a fun little silly trip to do that's not too far away from where I'm at. So worth giving it a chance, and I think it was well worth it.
All right, good deal, good deal. I looked that up a little bit online there over the last couple of days there. So glad to have you back here, and not only you didn't miss much overall. I think kind of the highlight of coming out of the weekend was and I don't know how much we hit on this, Jeremy Bernard and Roman Wilson, getting some off-season work in with the Route God, and those videos surfaced there over the weekend, and then TJ Watt's got, I think, Herbig and Jack Sawyer up there in Wisconsin, along with, I think, several other current kind of NFL players going through the paces at, I believe, the Watt training facility up there. I guess it's good news that we don't have a lot to report this time of year. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out for any contract extensions for maybe Porter and even potentially Keanu Benton. We're waiting to see if the Steelers have to restructure any contracts at any point before the start of training camp. There's been no movement there, so it's been pretty stagnant overall there. But I think first I think we should recognize that it's the Steelers' birthday today, right? And also Jack Lambert's birthday as well.
It is. The Steelers turning the big 9-3. The franchise was founded on this date, July 8th, 1933, when the NFL officially accepted Art Rooney Sr., the chief, his bid to purchase a team for $2,500. No small sum back then, especially during the Great Depression. So it is very fitting that Jack Lambert, an icon of the Steelers franchise who embodies many of the values and the style and mentality that Pittsburgh has played with for so long, it's fitting they both share birthdays on July 8th. So the big 9-3 in a decade, or less than a decade, they'll be 100 years old, which is just crazy to think about. So yeah, happy birthday to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right. I guess the other kind of news to come out of yesterday, kind of Steelers related, is for fans of the team that live outside of the local viewing area in Pittsburgh. It appears as though all 3 preseason games for the Steelers will be shown live on the NFL Network. So there was that release yesterday from ESPN. I think ESPN and NFL Network are kind of all in the same I guess blocked now there, so they released the press releases to kind of together, and I think it was on the ESPN website there. So, assuming that you get NFL, I know there's been one or two people that have commented saying, "Well, my cable company doesn't carry NFL Network right now." Well, if that's the case, I feel for you there, especially if you live outside of the Pittsburgh area. And as far as which broadcast team that you would get if you're watching on the NFL Network, it's hard to say for sure. I imagine it's whatever is closest to your viewing area of whether or not you'll get the home or away broadcasters during the preseason there. But if you can't get the game that either locally or on NFL Network, I imagine you can sign up on NFL Plus and watch them get streamed that way. And then if you do miss them that way, then well, I think you still need NFL Network to watch the replays of them. So that's pretty big news overall, and obviously the Steelers are a huge draw whenever they're on TV. So I'm excited that I'll at least be able to see them on NFL Network and not have to stream them on NFL Plus.
Two thoughts, Dave, to go back to what you said top of the show, what you guys talked about a little bit on the Monday show with Jeremy Bernard working out with Roman Wilson and James Everett, better known as the route god who trains a ton of wide receivers in the offseason. My takeaway for that was it's obviously great to see Bernard putting in extra work. All these guys, I'm sure, are putting in extra work. Bernard, in this case, a little more visible, but man, Jerry Bernard is rocked up. This dude was 206 pounds, and he looks even maybe bigger than that right now. And it's no slight to Roman Wilson. He's certainly in shape and just different body composition. But seeing Roman next to Bernard, Bernard looks like a tank out there.
Yeah, he's a put together kid for sure. And yeah, I think one of the big takeaways is not so much that, look, all these guys are out there doing off season work and getting themselves ready for training camp. I haven't followed this closely enough to have stats or tracking on it and all, but usually it isn't until after the rookie season where you see a lot of these guys get specialized and pay that extra money, I guess, to have these guys work with them as part of their off-season training. So it just goes to show, I think Bernard's dedication to take it upon himself to pay the extra money to work with a guy like the route god, and it's good, obviously, to see him and Roman Wilson working together in that capacity. And these are two guys that are probably going to be competing for that number 3 wide receiver spot, at least for we expect, I think, to see, assuming Roman makes the team, to see them both play in that capacity, as a third wide receiver. But yeah, it's just a good feel good takeaway, and you always like to see these videos surface of these guys getting in their off season work, and I think the main takeaway, as you stated there, is Jeremy Bernard looks like he's in fantastic shape and kind of an imposing guy as he enters his first training camp here in the NFL.
And that conditioning is critical. You're nothing if you're not a conditioned player able to absorb a lot of snaps. And it appears that Bernard's going to be able to do that. So I know earlier this offseason, Vince Williams talked about this can be a challenging time for a rookie because it's your one break and you're away from the team. And do you stay on schedule and stay disciplined, or do you get a little bit lax of, hey, I'm in the NFL, I'm going to go travel a little bit, go see my old stomping grounds and be a little bit lackadaisical on kind of my work as I'm kind of catching my breath here. And it seems like Bernard's certainly putting in a ton of work. So what does that mean for his rookie season? Still a long ways to go, a lot to find out, plenty he'll have to prove, but the skill set is there, the work ethic is there, the conditioning seems there. My other thought, and I'm sure we've had this conversation before, but because it is Pittsburgh's now 93rd birthday, who is your favorite Steeler of all time? If you had to pick just one, for whatever reason, just near and dear to your heart, Dave, who would that be?
Oh man, Mean Joe Green for me.
Okay.
I remember blown away by that Coca-Cola commercial. Everybody wanted to be that little kid that Joe Green tossed a jersey to. So, that's one of the most earliest, I think, memories that I have as a kid, and obviously collecting football cards and watching the Steelers as much as I could as a kid in the Southeast and all, and I mean, for someone my age, and obviously the Super Bowls and all like that. I mean, it's an easy choice, I think, for me because the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had a Joe Green jersey, from the Sears and Roebuck calendar or catalog. I think I had a Franco Harris one as well too. So though, and look, everybody, I used to pretend to be Terry Bradshaw in the front yard throwing the football around as well. So if you made me narrow it down to three, I think the three most iconic, were obviously Mean Joe Green, Franco Harris, Terry Bradshaw, and Lynn Swann. I mean, I obviously remember the big catches that Lynn Swann had against the Cowboys in a couple of Super Bowls as well too. So those would be at the top of my list easily, just from childhood memories related to that.
I'm going to make you put on the analyst hat now, and this may be a simple question. A follow-up to it is Mean Joe Green the greatest player in franchise history?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy that's responsible for playing a large role in turning this franchise around, right? So, and when you think about the four Super Bowls, your Hall of Fame career, and yeah, to me, I think it starts with Mean Joe Green.
Do you think, and this is impossible to really answer, but what are the odds 50 years from now he is still considered the best player in franchise history?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that not being the case in today's NFL, especially it's hard to imagine teams putting together, the Super Bowl, the dynasties, if you will. So especially when it comes to the Steelers, I mean, hopefully we get to the point where we're talking about, four Super Bowls in a decade and all like that. But I don't know. The way today's youth is raised, and it's more about the now and the accessibility to clips and all like that. I find it hard to believe that over time, 50 years from now, that if they're asked to build a Mount Rushmore of Steelers players, that Joe Green won't be included on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to ever top him unless there is another similar dynasty. A quarterback presumably would have to be that guy just because of the player that Green was, but also just culturally what he meant in the turnaround of this franchise from the lovable losers they were to the dynasty they exited after Green's career ended. Back in 2016, we made our personal top 100 greatest Steelers list. Green was number one on your list. He was on mine as well. Do you remember who number two was on your list?
Oh, wow. No, I don't remember.
It was Terry Bradshaw.
Okay.
So a decade later, which is crazy to say, do you think he'd still be number two on your list if you remade that top 100 best players in Steelers history?
Oh, wow. When did we make that list?
2016, if you can believe it. So
Wow.
pretty much it was July 2016, so literally a decade ago.
Look, I mean, he was iconic growing up for me,
But was
and
he the best? Because I think a difference between kind of the lore of Bradshaw. I'm not saying right or wrong he is or isn't, but I'm just saying, is he the best?
I mean, in his era, oh boy, 2016. That's 10 years ago now at this point. Uh, I mean, you think about Troy Polamalu, you think of all these Hall of Famers that have come through. Jack. Obviously celebrating Jack Lambert's birthday today. I don't know, Alex.
Let, let- let- let me put it this way: you had Ben at 5 on that list, and Ben still had some more runway in his career. Would Ben still be behind Bradshaw on your personal list?
I think so, just from the championship aspect of it and all.
Okay.
Look, Ben was a great player. Obviously, going to be a future Hall of Famer at some point. Uh, it's so hard to separate childhood memories and what the Steelers did and what the Steelers meant to me as a kid from going into a time of being I guess more of a general fan because life getting in the way in the '80s and all like that, and then getting into kind of I guess, a professional aspect of it from what I've done from 2008 on. Now, look, I'm very fortunate to have say uh, at this point that I watched the entire career and closely monitored the career of Ben Roethlisberger. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I wish he would have won a couple more Super Bowls along the way, but the fact that he did win, a couple during that time is significant. On top of it, I mean, pound for pound, was Ben the better quarterback than Bradshaw was, especially for just straight quarterback play? Absolutely, he was. But for what Bradshaw was during his playing days, I mean, it was him and Roger Staubach.
Mm.
In my memory, those were the two best quarterbacks, in the NFL for me growing up at the time. So I don't know. Ask me, I guess, in another 10 years or so. But I mean, just for what Bradshaw was able to accomplish, with the four Super Bowls, has him ranked up there.
Your top five at that time: Joe Green 1, Terry Bradshaw 2, Jack Lambert 3, Mike Webster 4, and Ben Roethlisberger 5. My top
Okay.
five back then, for those interested: Joe Green 1, Jack Lambert 2, Mel Blount 3, Lynn Swann 4, and Mike Webster 5. I had Ben at 7. I might do that list again for next year and
All right.
see where I come in at.
All right. I'll give it more thought with all this time passed. Come that time as well too.
Just something to talk about on Sheila's birthday, so just wanted to pick your brain on that, Dave. Let's talk about the here and now. ESPN is doing a almost daily top 10 list that they do annually, where NFL executives rank the top 10 players at each position group. Cornerbacks made the list and was published yesterday, and Joey Porter Jr., Dave, not among that top 10. He did get an honorable mention and a couple of positive comments, but nowhere near the top 10. It was Patrick Surtain, Derek Stingley, Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon, Trent McDuffie making up the top 5. So, your thoughts on Porter not being included on that list, and is this possibly any way of leverage for Pittsburgh to say, hey, the NFL at large does not view Porter as a top 10 corner. We're not going to pay you $30 million, which is what the very best corners make these days.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, I understand some of the rankings, or the rankings here, specifically the top 10. I mean, you got guys in there. Sauce Gardner at 9, Cooper DeJean at 10. Even I don't know if I would have ranked Kamari Lassiter ahead, but look, I mean, you could shoehorn. I think you could shoehorn Porter in there. Anywhere between 7 and obviously 12, where I think he ended up in there. I don't I As far as pay and contracts go, it's always, I don't think you can look at those guys and then automatically say, well, he's not in the top 10 there, so that means he shouldn't be paid as much as someone per se in the top 5, because it's always what the most recent contract was, what the inflation is when you signed that deal. If Porter had more takeaways at this point of his career, I think it would certainly help him when it comes to these rankings. I don't think, kind of globally at this point, especially when you talk about major media type people, talking heads, if you will, that if you ask them if Joey Porter is a top 10 cornerback in the league right now, and obviously this sort of reflects it. We're talking because the survey was done from coaches, scouts, and executives. I'd be curious to wonder how deep and how many of those coaches, scouts, and executives were actually polled in this. I mean, I think globally, do people consider Joey Porter Jr. a top 10 cornerback in the NFL right now? Probably not. But I don't think this will have a bearing on whether or not he becomes, let's say, a top 5 highest paid cornerback here between now and the start of the regular season, if that makes any sense.
Sure, I don't believe Omar Khan's going to pull up this ESPN article and give it to Andre Odom, Porter's agent, and say, see, this is why we're not going to pay you X amount of dollars. But Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon, as you guys have noted and written about, are in line for potential contract extensions too. And if they're viewed as better players and they get paid, would Porter be able to surpass them? Maybe not. So if Gonzalez is getting, say, $30 million per year, then that's probably the ceiling for Porter, and probably he'll have to come in under that. And so I think it's fair to put Gonzalez and Witherspoon above Joey Porter Jr. in terms of just the best corners in the NFL. And if those guys are getting, whatever they get, Porter may end up getting less than that.
Yeah, look, I think I can understand why Porter's side might be trying to angle, at least holding out hope that he can become the highest paid cornerback at this point. I think he's going to have problems getting there if that's his ultimate goal here. And I always like to throw out there, remember that the Steelers have the threat of the franchise tag on top of it. I do think, I think they if they can get out of if Porter's side can get out of this with them being a top 3 highest paid cornerback, I think they will be doing good. I've always kind of thought along this process here that around 28 million per feels like at least a good floor number when it comes to Porter here, but it is always what the last guy got when you're signing the deal. The Steelers do have some leverage in here. Look, Porter's set to make almost $4 million this year. What's the franchise tag going to be a year from now? Is it going to be what? 32, 33, 30, who knows what the franchise tag will end up being, but that is some degree of leverage on the Steelers side there. I think the biggest talk here outside of the APY when it comes to Porter is once again getting into the guaranteed money talk. If he isn't the top 3 highest, if it doesn't wind up being from APY standpoint the top 3 highest paid cornerback in the league, it's hard to imagine him getting fully guaranteed money outside of the 2026 season here. But look, we've got a lot more of these lists. I imagine on the way here, was I totally shocked to not see Joey Porter Jr. Top 10 on the list here? No. Do I take it as a huge snub? Personally, no. Will Joey Porter Jr.? Yes, because that's the way it goes here. I am just curious, though, overall, how many of these executives, coaches, and front office guys that they did talk to here.
Yeah, we don't have an exact number. I assume it's a pretty healthy group of things to talk about. Something about 85% of ballots had some of these corners on the list, and so that probably means it's more than just 3 or 4 people they're talking to. It should be a pretty long list of names. But Porter, as all good corners should, will I assume use this as fuel, and a really good 2026 should get him on this list in 2027. By the way, the list continued today, as you said, Dave, with the edge rushers, TJ Watt falling to 7th on that list. Is that fair or foul, with one AFC executive telling Jeremy Fowler of ESPN that Watt is, quote, definitely in decline? He's still very good, but some of the younger players have surpassed him.
I think it's fair, and I haven't even seen that list to see who's above him. Do you have?
I can read off the names. It's Myles Garrett first, no surprise there. I think he was unanimous choice from the executives. Micah Parsons 2, Will Anderson Jr. 3, Max Crosby 4, Aiden Hutchinson 5, Danielle Hunter 6, and then Watt 7. Highest ranking 3, lowest ranking unranked, according to the execs.
All right. It feels fair overall, especially what we've seen out of Watt. I mean, look, if he would have been able to stay healthy late last season and not had that dry needling incident, and then I think you go back was it the year before with the ankle and all that, but it does seem to be always something kind of minor, whether it be his own fault or someone else's, running into him or whatnot. Didn't that happen with, what was it, Montravius Adams or something a couple of years ago, later in the season, causing him to miss a couple of games and all? Look, is TJ Watt likely to hit a 20 sack season moving forward? Probably not. Is his best football at this point probably behind him? Yes. Is he still one of the league's top pass rushers? Yes. So, I mean, the fact that he's outside of the top five doesn't surprise me. And yeah, 7 feels okay.
Is there anybody ahead of Watt that you would put behind him? Again, the list being Garrett, Parsons, Anderson, Crosby, Hutchinson, and Hunter.
I don't know. Hunter, he always ends up. I don't know. I had to go back and uh, remember some of the stuff Hunter has done there. I think maybe you could make an argument that T.J. Watt maybe belongs ahead of Hunter.
I would say maybe Hutchinson, even though he did bounce back last year. I might probably still put Watt as a talent above Hutchinson. Hunter's been such an underrated player, I think, for years in Minnesota, finally getting his due in Houston with that top defense, that Anderson-Hunter pairing that Pittsburgh found out about last year in the wildcard game, maybe the best in football. But I'd probably put Watt above Hutchinson. The rest, I think, are fair to be above him.
All right.
All right, Dave, let's go to a study that I did the other day.
Real quick,
Mhm,
we
go ahead.
just talked about Porter. What do you think about the comments Darius Slay had on Joey Porter on ESPN? I guess yesterday.
Well, to summarize the comments, there was a lot of praise for Porter about his potential and his ability. I think one comment that drew a little bit of headline or an eyebrow raise is including from former Steelers cornerback and at least part-time scout Ike Taylor was that Darius Slay calling Porter's hands a little sus, and he believes he can improve upon that and can get better there. And mentors like Jalen Ramsey can help that part of his game. And for those that are of a certain age, a little sus means not great, a little suspect. And Porter, of course, that's been the big bugaboo. Only one interception in each season of his NFL career, had one interception during his time at Penn State. Never been a big takeaway guy. I was thinking about this. I think you guys talked about it a little bit on the Monday show. Are Porter's hands bad? I can't recall him flat out dropping many passes, maybe one or two, but like Ike Taylor just dropped a
Right.
million interceptions. Porter just simply has not been able to get his head around to find the ball to catch it. I think he improved there a little bit last year, even though the interception numbers did not spike. But I don't know if his hands are actually bad.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I don't want to call Porter's hands suspect. Now his hands get him in trouble in other areas or have up until
Sure.
last season. We saw the penalties come down, and that was a big component of the step moving forward for him. I think more than anything, the fact that Joey Porter Jr. has such long arms helps him in the fact that he gets to balls that maybe a lot of these other corners won't be able to reach and get to and disrupt the passes on. But look, I think Ike Taylor's diving a little deep there into maybe some criticism from Slay. I mean, overall, he says the only thing I think is wrong with him is his ball production. Doesn't have a lot of picks right now, and that's a truthful statement. He does say, but they're coming. In Slay's opinion, he says I've been with him in Pittsburgh. His hands, once again, I think suspect is a strong, way to describe it there. But he goes on to say he's going to get them, though. He says, hope Jalen Ramsey's working with him over there because he's a guy that can get to the rock. Other than that, Joey's for sure going to be a guy that's going to sneak into this top 10 easily. He's got a big payday coming up, too. And Pittsburgh, make sure you do my boy right. So I think generally Darius Slay thinks highly of Joey Porter Jr. at this point of his career.
Yeah, I took no issue with what Slay said, and Taylor on Twitter actually responding to a tweet that you had, Dave, where you wrote out Slay's comments, and Taylor saying, essentially saying back in my era, we wouldn't talk about teammates this way or former teammates this way, and would kind of keep things in house. Slay's no longer Porter's teammates. I believe this came when Slay was on ESPN, and so your goal and your role is to offer commentary, the positive and the negative. It was overall a pretty good endorsement of Porter. And yeah, Porter's ball production has always been a thing that's knocked him, and it's hard to argue otherwise, even if you think his hands themselves, in terms of his ability to catch the football, are fine. So yeah, I thought everything Slay said was in bounds.
Look, I mean, if if Joey Porter Jr. had 3 or 4 more interceptions at this point of his career, would he have been in that in those top 10 list or in that ESPN top 10 list? Probably.
Probably.
So, you know, that seems. And look, you go back to his college career, and obviously he wasn't thrown at quite, a lot, especially final few seasons here at Penn State and all. And one of the criticism, one of the things that probably kept him from being a first round draft pick was the lack of ball production, if you will, there. But I have never viewed him as a guy, more than anything. I think the progress that Joey Porter Jr. has made, his play against the run, the decrease in his penalties, the fact that he's getting, has at some aspects traveled with some opposing receivers. It'd be interesting to see how much of that is done moving forward here, specifically with Dean pretty much being, playing most of his career on one side there. But I think he's a do-it-all cornerback, and the progression, I think, moving forward here is just getting more refined in some of those areas, keeping the penalties down there, and maybe getting 2 or 3 interceptions in 2026. I don't. And while continuing to not give up a lot of completions when thrown his way.
Just one thought on the penalties. I do think Porter improved there. His technique got better. I thought the work that then DB's coach, Gerald Alexander, did with Porter was really useful to help get his head around, to avoid some of those penalties. But, I mean, what is the real breakdown in terms of the number? He had 12 the year before in 2024, but that was in 16 games. He had only 6 last year, but he missed 3 games with that knee injury. And so I don't know what that is. Quick math on a, relative per game scale. I think 2025 still comes out better than 2024. But I think if you look at just the adjustment for him missing some time, that difference maybe isn't quite as stark as the cut in half makes it out to be.
Well, I think the big thing is stacking them up in single games as well too, right? He had that disastrous game. Who was it against that he had?
The Commanders or the Bengals.
Yeah,
I think it was.
multiple and those added. That was just him losing focus and I to. In other words, boiling it down to one bad game in that situation there certainly played a big part, obviously, in the total numbers. You just don't want to see games like that where he does have 3 or 4 of them in a game.
Right. No, I understand. And you're right. They would stack. And I think he got better of kind of getting in those slumps and that streak of a bunch of penalties in one game. So yeah, 2024, he averaged 0.75 per game. And then last year, 0.43. So certainly still an improvement. Recognize that. I think there was a lot of good, but that's not quite the in-half number if you look at it from a per-game basis, because Porter did miss early. He played the opener, got hurt, and then missed a couple of weeks and then came back. So just a thought there on Joey Porter Jr. All right, Dave, let's go to a study that I did that released the other day, I think on Monday, my annual study, but I think it's really interesting this year with the new coaching staff of, do the Steelers have the NFL's smallest coaching staff? This was a common critique a couple of years ago when Mike Tomlin was the head coach about the Rooneys are cheap, or Tomlin is a control freak and they don't want to hire coaches, and they have the smallest coaching staff in football, and this is a big problem for the team. So I've been doing an annual study looking at the Steelers coaching staff size, the rest of the NFL, what are the trends, and does it matter? Does a larger coaching staff correlate to better results and more team success or not? So with Mike McCarthy in charge and including the latest hire, Darian Thompson, the special teams quality control coach, Pittsburgh has 21 coaches in total this year. I base that off of the coaches listed on the team website. That's 10 on offense, 8 on defense, 2 on special teams, and of course, Mike McCarthy. This is still tied for last with as the smallest coaching staff in the NFL, with the Bengals and Chiefs also at 21. The NFL average is 24 and a half total coaches. The largest coaching staff, the 49ers, Raiders, and Browns all have 28. So I don't know if you got a chance to check out my study, Dave. The coaching staff size from last year went from 19 to 21 this year. So the coaching staff did get larger, but it is still now tied as the smallest coaching staff in football.
Look, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have any problem with the size of their coaching staff over there. The New England Patriots only have two more there, and then you look at some of these teams, the Raiders and the Browns at the top with 28. Give me quality, Alex. I will surely choose quality over quantity, and I think maybe looking back, especially the last several seasons here. To me, maybe the quality hasn't been up to snuff. Whereas I'm excited about the quality that was added this offseason. I'm really excited to see what Patrick Graham can do with this defense specifically. James Campen and Jari Evans with that offensive line there. So I don't think that you can pinpoint, well, because the team has X amount of coaches, we should expect this type of success over time there. I think it is an interesting study. Props to you for going as deep as you did on this study and all, but give me quality over quantity.
Sure, I agree. My general takeaway that I write at the end of the post is I've not, and I say I've not seen it for any year that I've done the study, any sort of prolonged correlation or clear correlation between a larger coaching staff giving a team more success than a smaller coaching staff. What I really have come to find is younger coaches tend to have larger coaching staffs, I think in part because of the upbringing. The older, more veteran coaches have smaller coaching staffs because they grew up in an era where you had smaller coaching staffs just more naturally. That tracks with the smallest coaching staffs in football. McCarthy, Andy Reid, tied for last, two of the most veteran coaches in the NFL. The Raiders with their first year young head coach and Clint Kubiak. You have the 49ers, still a pretty young head coach, and Kyle Shanahan. A lot of younger coaches kind of dot that top of the list. And so I'm not seeing a big correlation between having a larger coaching staff and team success. But I recognize in the motivation for this study way back when was because this was a hot topic. And I think people kind of forget that Art Rooney had to address it at one point, was asked about the coaching staff size, and there was a lot of criticism Pittsburgh's direction. So I think that's become less of a talking point than what it was, which I think is fine based on my study. But I think it's interesting to see where Pittsburgh is at, especially with McCarthy and this new look coaching staff.
Do you think if Mike McCarthy felt the need to have three more, let's say three more coaches on staff, he would be granted the ability to granted the funds to make that happen?
Yeah, I can't answer that with certainty, obviously, but I think he probably would. This coaching staff is a little bit smaller than what he had in Dallas in 2024. He had 2023, excuse me, let me start over. In 2024, he had 23. In 2023, he had 24. And then in 2022, he had 21 coaches on his coaching staff with the Cowboys. So he's got 21 this year. What I found interesting is maybe less about Pittsburgh, but just some of the global trends in the NFL that I think are worthy of more examination and just kind of recognition of. So the coaching staff sizes have continually grown in 2022. The first year of our study, the coaching staff size on average was 21.7. Now it's 24.5. Offensive coaches have grown from 9.8 in 2022 to 11.6 in 2026. Defensive coaches from 8.4 to 9.5. Special teams, though, is held remarkably steady, 2.3 back in 2022, 2.3 in 2026. But there's some other interesting things. No team has more defensive coaches than offensive coaches. Only the Texans have an equal number. I think it's 11 offensive, 11 defensive. Of course, a defensive-minded head coach, and they have the best defense in football. And no team has more than 11 defensive coaches, but half the league, 16 teams, have at least 12 offensive coaches. So we talk about the offensive nature in the NFL. You see the coaching staff reflect that.
All right, look, we got we're what a little less than 3 weeks away from training camp getting underway, and obviously McCarthy will have probably an opening press conference when that happens. One of the questions maybe that what the media can throw out there is what are the advantages or disadvantages of having either a smaller or larger coaching staff, and what is how would what would be his explanation for the Steelers having being tied for one of the, something creative along the lines of size of coaching staffs and relevance as far as the good and bad related to that.
Right. I mean, I'm sure his response would be what you said: the quality of the coaching staff, the people matter more than just the sheer number of coaches. And there can be a potential detriment to a coaching staff that's too large, too many cooks in the kitchen, as the saying goes, too muddied of a message, too many guys without clear defined roles. So there is no right or wrong answer here. This article is not set out to make a critique of Pittsburgh necessarily. It's to examine the numbers, the data, the changes in the NFL. And like I said, I thought some of the global stuff about the offensive coaches, every team having more offensive coaches than defensive coaches, except for the Texans, is interesting. Just the offensive slant the NFL has. That may not be a shock, but it's good to put some of the data to it. And of course, it was good to really re-examine this with Mike McCarthy, with a new look coaching staff. And we'll continue to do that each year because I like looking at the numbers. I don't know of any other outlet or place that does it. And so it's good for us to continue to do it, to have the data in real time and be able to look at it, years down the road.
All right. I know you went back to 2022 at least, but do you? I would be interested to know, have the Steelers ever had, or when was the last time the Steelers had as many as 21 total coaches on their staff?
Yeah, finding that data can be a little bit tricky just because the Steelers site no longer keeps it. You can go on Wikipedia, but do you always trust that that's 100% accurate? They may never have because, like I said, coaching staffs have continued to grow over the years. And so having 21, and say 2017 probably would have been one of the largest groups in football if I had to wager. And I don't think Pittsburgh had that back then. So I don't know. I can't answer that. I just go back to when I began to study for the 2022 season, but Pittsburgh at 21 right now.
All right. Good work by you. That's quite in depth. That's hard to do.
All right, Dave, let's go to the 90 and 30 series, motoring right along. And you saved me a plate here. Now, you guys just did the one with Highsmith, Hoffman, and Holcomb. So we got plenty to dig into today to kind of stay with my buffet theme, the way we kicked off the show. We'll start with Travis Homer, the running back, the special teams ace. And that's been his calling card for several years now. Not much of an offensive piece, even though he is technically a running back. He'll be competing for that third running back spot or maybe that 53rd spot as a special teamer this summer, Dave.
All right. The thing with Homer, when I got into writing him up, I go back to when he was originally signed by the Steelers early in the offseason. 1 year, 1.3 veteran benefit contract. Did not receive any fully guaranteed money as part of that deal. Obviously, been around the NFL for quite a few seasons. His last 3 NFL seasons with the Bears, the first 4 with the Seahawks. Former 6th-round draft pick. The fact that he's been able to stick in the league as long as he's been able to as a running back, and specifically a late round running back, I think kind of speaks to his overall abilities, most of which have been kind of revolved around special teams. He's logged 90 career carries during regular season play so far. Going back to when he was originally signed, I think at the time you started to try to work in your head. Okay, this is a guy that seemingly seems to be headed towards a 53-man roster spot. Obviously, a lot is kind of happened since then. I mean, you've got the drafting of Eli Heidenreich. You got obviously you got Dowdle coming in via free agency around the same time there. When you look at Travis Homer's body of work overall, it's not overly impressive from a true running back perspective. He can get you in and out of games, and potentially be a spot starter for you. But at this point of his career right now, and I think what's mainly being able to keep him in the league is his play on special teams. Now, when you look kind of forward into this summer and training camp and position battles, we got a big question. I think maybe we'll get to him today because I recently wrote about him with Caleb Johnson. What is his future with this team this summer. How many total running backs is this team going to keep on the 53-man roster? You would think that Caleb Johnson, if he does make this team, specifically if Dowdle and Warren are healthy come the start of the season, that Caleb Johnson's going to have to show that he can at least contribute some on some special teams units. Homer's going to have the upper hand on him when it comes to that. How does Eli Heidenreich figure into all this as well too? So I think earlier in the offseason, particularly right after Homer was signed, you were more apt to include Travis Homer in a 53-man roster prediction. As the offseason has moved on here, I definitely don't think anybody should be writing his name in pen. I do think, though, that he does have the leg up when it comes to the special teams aspect of his play, and that's going to be tough for Caleb Johnson to even come close to matching, because you go back to what got Caleb Johnson in the doghouse last year was in week 2 with that fumble or allowing that ball to bounce and get into the end zone, and the Seahawks get it there. That was very hard for the Steelers to move past there. It's going to be an interesting battle for Homer, though. I certainly wouldn't pencil him in on the 53, or I wouldn't pin him in on the 53-man roster at this point. But in the same breath, if we got to the start of the, after the preseason's completed and he wound up being a member of the 53-man roster, I would imagine it would be as a number 3 or number 4 running back, and he would be a guy that you would dress on a weekly basis because of his special teams play. I think on the offensive side of football, I want to see him play during the preseason. I think we will on the offensive side of football. I want to see how he functions in pass protection. It hasn't been an overly strong suit, I don't think, overall. And look, if this is a guy that goes out there on special teams during the preseason and ends up with something like 5 or 6 total tackles, it's going to be hard for Danny Crossman to keep him off the unit as well too. But you don't have anything invested in him with it when it comes to guaranteed money. He's going to have to stay healthy throughout the summer and the preseason there. But not a lot to make the 53-man roster. But in the same breath, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up on it just the same.
Yeah, I think Homer's spot will be dictated largely by what others do around him. What can Caleb Johnson show in his second year? Can he really cement his spot with a strong summer that compels Pittsburgh to keep him and look like the third-round pick he was drafted and envisioned to be? Can Eli Heidenreich show a good rookie summer where he has special teams value and versatility, and you would imagine more offensive value than Travis Homer? So I imagine Homer will have a very Travis Homer summer where he's going to be solid on special teams, trusted. Could he be the up back on the punt team? Have an article on that coming up to replace what Miles Killebrew did last year. I'm sure he'll get some reps there. I think he has a background there. He's obviously an accomplished special teamer, a very, high floor, low ceiling type of a guy. And so if others around him, young guys around him, struggle to make their case, then Homer may make it. If the other guys, show well, they're younger, they have more offensive value, then Homer probably loses out. So I think Homer is really just kind of dictated by what others do as opposed to exactly what he does.
Yeah, and I'll have more to say kind of about this, specifically with Caleb Johnson when we get to him. I don't know if we'll get to the Caleb Johnson today or not, as far as our 90 and 30 series and all. But yeah, look, I mean, if you're going to be a number 3 or number 4 running back on this team, you got to be able to play special teams. And Howard or Homer has certainly shown that throughout his NFL career.
Yep, I agree. So that is his path to making it, and I think it's pretty well defined, although the odds of him making it are a little bit muddied right now. So we can probably move on now to one Will Howard, who certainly will be under the microscope after a lost rookie year to that broken finger in his throwing hand in training camp, missed the preseason, and now fighting for a roster spot perhaps, but also the number 2 spot behind Aaron Rodgers.
Oh boy, one of the biggest tragedies about last summer in the preseason was us not getting to see Will Howard play, I think. And now you fast forward a year ahead, and only one game last season. I think Howard was technically the backup quarterback for behind Mason Rudolph, and that was the game that Aaron Rodgers missed. He was once he did come back from that injury, he was at least Howard was dressed as an emergency inactive quarterback, but we haven't even seen Will Howard take a snap in a Steelers uniform. Hopefully, we'll be able to see that once this year's preseason gets underway here. And now you fast forward, you got Drew Aller on the roster. You've got obviously Aaron Rodgers back. You got Mason Rudolph still under contract. Aller's going to make this 53-man roster barring any sort of injury. Rodgers obviously will as well. So it becomes a battle, it seems like, between Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, assuming this team doesn't keep four quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, which it remains at least a plausible outcome within this. Look, Howard has to stay healthy this summer. We got to see him in the preseason, and I think he needs to play well. He's got to give this team confidence that he can give them what they need as a primary backup to Aaron Rodgers. If he's unable to do that, and look, I don't know how much we'll actually see of Rudolph, but kind of Rudolph at this point is at least a known commodity in a backup role at this point. It's all up to Howard, I think, whether or not he can seize that backup job, because I think it's either the backup job or maybe he potentially gets bounced. And if he ultimately were to get waived before the start of the regular season because of his college pedigree, even though he was a 6th-round draft pick, you do have to wonder if another team might like him enough to at least bring him in to start their regular season and essentially claim him off waivers to be their number 3 quarterback to start the season here. So I think what Will Howard does in training camp and the preseason, he's got to give this team confidence that he can serve as the backup to Aaron Rodgers. And if he can't, then I think he's got to hope that the team keeps 4 quarterbacks in total for him to have a 53-man roster spot in Pittsburgh past the preseason.
Do you view those are the 2 most likely ways for Howard to be on this roster, either as that number 2 behind Rodgers or them keeping 4 quarterbacks? Is there any other scenario in which Howard sticks?
I can't see it because look, I don't think Aller. And I think the development with Aller is going to take a little bit of time here. That I think it would be surprising if he ended up the number 2. Not saying that it couldn't happen. Stranger things have happened, but to me, it feels like backup or bust for
Yeah.
Will Howard or the 4 quarterback scenario.
Yeah. I guess that was kind of a bad question for me because really, what other options are there? Because I mean, unless you're cutting Drew Aller, which is not obviously going to happen unless something insane occurs. So, my view is Will Howard will enter campus as number 2 quarterback. Will be given every chance to win that job. It'll be kind of his to lose, and if he performs reasonably well, we'll be the number 2 quarterback, and Rudolph becomes expendable. And if not, it becomes interesting about what happens then. But I think it's Howard's job to lose, and a good showing this summer will get him the job, even though it'll be very inexperienced. If it's Howard and Aller behind Aaron Rodgers, we've talked about that McCarthy's constructed rosters like that before in Green Bay and in Dallas, so not something out of the norm for his roster construction purposes. So that's what Howard has to do. Now the question is, what exactly does Howard what is the number one thing Howard must show this preseason to be able to give this team confidence he is the number 2 quarterback behind Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, look, he's got to show an understanding of the offense, even in preseason, as vanilla as that might be. He's got to make the right reads. He's got to have the accuracy. He can't have those boneheaded rookie-like plays, even though he's never played, in an NFL game, preseason or regular season. I mean, look, plain and simple, we've got to at least have some confidence throughout. And look, training camp's going to play a big part in this as well, too, because at most probably 100 snaps, maybe 120. I don't know for Will Howard during the preseason there. How many of those are going to be run plays? And then once again, it's not like you're going to go out and show opposition. There's going to be a lot of vanilla stuff in there. He's going to be working with probably a lot of young players. I can't imagine DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman playing a lot of snaps. You're going to have guys like Jeremy Bernard and Roman Wilson that he's throwing to if indeed he is getting the time that we think he's going to get during the preseason here. So I mean, this coaching staff's got to come out of preseason having confidence that he is one play away from entering a game, and that the drop off won't be considerable, or at least it would be better than what the team thinks Mason Rudolph could be able to give this team here. Look, I've said it for quite a while now, and even though you and I had Howard as a third round draft pick. I think you had him as around a third or fourth round draft pick. I know Mike McCarthy's come out and said that he thinks that Howard should have been drafted higher than he ultimately was. Here's the thing. Sixth round quarterbacks in the NFL don't get many opportunities to show what they have. And assuming even Will Howard wins the backup job this year, if he were to get in the game, the clock's ticking on him, because teams just especially when you got a guy in the third round pedigree as Drew Aller has at this point. So he really has to seize it. This is a huge summer for a guy that didn't even play a snap in the preseason last year. So he's got a lot to prove in a short amount of time. And plain and simple, he's got to give the coaching staff confidence that they can move forward with him being one snap away from being in games in 2026. And if you can't do that, then more than likely his time in Pittsburgh's over with, because once again, you have to think around the NFL, there might be a team or two willing to take him on as a third quarterback.
Are expectations too high for Will Howard, a guy who's been hyped up since the moment he was drafted, initially as perceived great value, and then some of the early, maybe training camp buzz, and then, of course, all that Mike McCarthy said about Howard shortly after McCarthy was hired? Is it too high for a guy that's a young quarterback, yet to play a stadium snap, who's likely to make some mistakes and do some young quarterback things along the way? Or should expectations be high if we're going to hype up Howard the way that he's been hyped up, and if we're going to expect him to be the number 2 quarterback and be one snap away from putting the fate of the team in his hands? Should expectations just be high and a high bar for him to reach?
I think if you ask Steelers fans specifically, yeah, expectations, because he's a young quarterback and drafted by the team, are probably higher than what they should be. I think if you look at this globally and objectively, this guy's a 6th round quarterback, right?
Yeah,
So
but does that matter anymore? Like, he's a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, and all that matters is what he does on the field, regardless whether he was a first rounder or undrafted free agent.
well, what I'm saying is, I mean, expectations for 6th round quarterbacks, no matter what the organization they aren't shouldn't be generally high.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say any young quarterback's going to have his ebb and flow. Even top guys, top picks are going to have their struggles and their learning curves and experiences. And so I think expectations have been a little too high for Howard. Where I know the first interception or first mistake he makes, like, fans will be like, "Oh, he sucks. Get him out of here. Go play somebody else." Will be a little fickle in that way. So obviously, it's a tight turnaround, about a month to show that you could be the number 2 quarterback from the time they report to camp to the time. It's basically a month. I mean, they report their first practice is the 29th, and cutdowns is August 30th. Those decisions have to get made, and what that depth chart's going to look like. So it is, literally a month of action. But expect some highs and lows. But can he learn from mistakes? Can he even out his play? Can he get better throughout this process? That's what I'll be watching for.
Look, here's the thing. He was able to pick the brain of Aaron Rodgers and learn from him as a rookie. So even though he didn't play, at least he got to watch and learn from a veteran that's done it at a high level in Aaron Rodgers. Uh, he didn't obviously coming back from that injury and the amount of practice that he was at least able to have late last season, and getting ready for games. There is at least the expectation that even though he didn't play at all during the preseason or regular season, that he should at least look comfortable out there once he gets into preseason games. I think the expectations more than anything are for this summer is that the expectations is that he should play, and he should play at least 100 snaps and give us a good opportunity to evaluate him. That's what the expectations should be.
Yeah, he's going to play a ton this preseason, as he should. And he may get a little bit of time with the first team because I don't know if Rodgers is going to be played much, if at all, this preseason. And so I think Metcalf and Pittman and the offensive line certainly, and Dowdle and Warren will be getting some reps this summer. Not a ton, but some. And so I think, Howard will get a chance to play with the ones. Yeah, I was going to ask you, and you kind of made the point, should we treat Howard as a rookie whenever he takes the field in preseason action or in training camp, or treat him like a second-year player because it was kind of that weird rookie year of he was out. He went through his rookie season, but yet the snaps really weren't there.
No, you don't treat him like a rookie because that rookie. He's not a rookie anymore. He has been in NFL practices and on an NFL team, and fortunately did at least get practice time last year. So he is technically a first year player at this point now. So the fact that he hasn't played in as much as a preseason game up until this point, I don't think should matter. You like it or not, the expectations are for him to show that he can be the backup quarterback on this team at this point. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think you don't grade him necessarily on that curve, but you still understand there's going to be some young quarterback mistakes and some new things he'll be doing inside a stadium. So for me, as obvious and sort of cliche as it is, the things I want to see from Howard is show command of the huddle and then make plays, move the offense. That's your goal as a quarterback, is to move the offense, put points on the board, and that's your whole aim. That's the whole ball of wax. And so there's a lot of particulars you want to see with accuracy and processing. Can he drive the football? Can the arm strength be there? That was kind of one, bugaboo on him, one knock on him coming out of Ohio State. And that was one that I had on Will Howard, even though I was high on Howard's game overall. But just simply, can you make plays? Can you move the offense? Because if you're the backup quarterback, you enter the game, third quarter, it's a tight game. Your goal is to move the offense, put points, win the game. That's your whole thing. That's what Mason Rudolph was tasked to do last year. Obviously, that did not happen against Chicago, but can you do that? If you can do that, then I think he'll be the number 2 quarterback, Dave.
All right. Look, my projection for him has been all this offseason that he'll be, especially since we've known that Rodgers is coming back, is that he will ultimately be the backup. But he's got to go earn that job.
That's mine as well. I think he'll open the season as the number 2. Where that leaves Rudolph, we'll talk about later. But obviously, Howard still has a long ways to go and has to earn it and cement it. And he's far away from doing that. There's a long ways to go to get to that point.
All right.
Next on the list is Max Hurlman, a guy certainly fighting and at best outside looking in to make the roster, and probably one of those longer shot players, but was sort of a camp darling of sorts last year, him and Keyshawn Williams. And Hurlman remains, and a guy that, not impossible. He makes a push for the 53 this year, Dave.
All right, going back in my head and then researching him again after last year's 90 and 30. The Steelers originally signed him as an undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame last year, and that was after he participated in the team's annual mini rookie camp as a tryout player. The Steelers originally listed him, I think, last summer as a running back. He mainly played on defense and special teams for Notre Dame. He did return punts there, recorded 13 total tackles and 1 fumble recovery. Before transferring to Notre Dame, he played at Colgate, where he was mostly used as a running back, but did catch, I think, 80 passes for 841 yards during his time at Colgate. During the 2025 preseason, he did register 3 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown with a long of 26 yards. Despite being listed as a running back by the Steelers, he was mainly used as a wide receiver. He did log 73 offensive snaps in the team's 3 preseason games last year, another 15 on special teams. I think he was credited with 2 special teams tackles and a fumble recovery during the preseason. He was ultimately waived by the team, signed to the practice squad, and remained on the practice squad for the entire 2025 regular season, which which is a huge accomplishment for any player, specifically one that latched onto the team as a tryout player there. The team immediately signed him to reserve future contract in January. Obviously been on the offseason roster ever since, participated in the OTA and mini camp practices. I think it's clear at this point, though, that the Steelers consider Hurlman a wide receiver, especially the way they used him during the 2025 preseason. Assuming that's the case, he enters his second training camp as on a position group that includes two rookie draft picks in Jeremy Bernard and Caden Wetjen, both of whom are locks to make the 53-man roster barring injuries. So that means that Hurlman, when you look at the top to bottom depth chart at wide receiver, has a very, very tough road ahead of him again in training camp. While he can play on special teams, he certainly is going to have to make his mark in that phase of the game during the preseason to bolster his chances of at least remaining in Pittsburgh as a practice squad player. I think realistically, he's going to be battling to go back on the practice squad again throughout the summer here. The wide receiver depth chart is just too deep this offseason, in my opinion, for Hurlman to have a legitimate shot at making the 53-man roster. It would take more than just a few injuries, I think, at position group for that to happen. He's a great story, but it's going to be a huge uphill battle for him. I would imagine that if he can stay healthy throughout the summer, I could see him log in another 70-plus snaps, between offense and special teams throughout the preseason here. I don't think that's going to be hard to accomplish, especially when, Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. aren't likely to play all that much, and those snaps have to go to somebody. And you're obviously going to get Jeremy Bernard and Roman Wilson snaps. I don't know if you have to see that much of Ben Skoranek on offense moving forward as well too. So he's definitely going to have the opportunity to shine, I think, during the preseason. Interested to see if he logs maybe a few more special team snaps than he did a year ago. But I think realistically, we're looking at Hurlman competing for a spot on the practice squad, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb with that.
You are not. Sort of Heidenreich before Heidenreich, this versatile player, good athlete, kind of a good story to him. And Heidenreich actually talked about it recently. Max Hurlman's been a great teammate to him, kind of taking him under his wing. Sort of funny to say for a young guy like Hurlman trying to find his way too, but two guys with some similar backgrounds and skill sets. And so Hurlman's gotten a lot of praise for his work ethic. I think it was, I forget what receiver, maybe Roman was talking about post-practice. It's always him and Hurlman, and there was somebody else, maybe Brandon Johnson, I forget who it was, that was catching on the jugs machine post-practice. And so certainly work ethic in spades for Max Hurlman. But you're right, that path to the roster, it's just hard to see. You're getting squeezed by guys with sort of these versatile skill sets of Bernard and Weegen and Heidenreich. And where does that leave Hurlman? You're right, he was really a receiver last year. He got one carry in training camp, fumbled it, and that was the end of Max Hurlman playing running back. And so he was a receiver, made some plays on offense. I think caught a touchdown in the opener, I want to say, last year, and then had that recovery maybe against Tampa Bay. I thought with Hurlman, it was a really hot start, and then it kind of faded towards the finish line, which is not uncommon for a rookie, this long, grueling process. And so can you just run through the tape? I think he had a drop, maybe on the touchdown pass in the preseason, a little bit later after that touchdown catch in the second or third game. Can you just run through the tape and really finish strong, get on the practice squad, maybe an injury occurs, and that's your path to getting elevated and logging your first regular season snap? But there was certainly some promise, some buzz with Hurlman last year. He's worn all the hats. He's a smart guy. You outlined his bio, his background well, from Colgate to Notre Dame to Pittsburgh, making it as a tryout guy, no small feat, sticking this long, no small feat. So there's something there that's able to get him to stick, but he's got to be able to really have a good, strong finish, not just a good start to the summer.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you look at him and us talking about him for a second offseason in a row is the fact that he was able to stick on the practice squad for the entire season, and that's I'll continue to say that's no small small feat in today's NFL, even with 16 or 17 man practice squads, especially with with injuries and the way those units are kind of shuffled. It would have been a good 2025 season for him had he been off the practice squad for like 3 weeks and then signed back. But I think it speaks volumes that he was able to stick on that unit for the entire season.
Is he still wearing that ugly 34? No, he changed numbers this year. What is he at? 84? What is he? Yeah, he's 84 now.
Yeah.
Still called a running back on the team site, but certainly you would expect him to play wide receiver.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to Maxi Honitschor, the first-round pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, the first of the Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh era. And, of course, the eyes will be on a training camp battle at right tackle, we presume, with Dylan Cook. And can Honitschor win it out of the gate, Dave?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about him since he was drafted in the first round there. I don't know how much more we're going to be able to add from previous discussions here. Obviously, enters the NFL, deemed, a raw tackle prospect at this point. Didn't start playing football until obviously later in his life, I think 2021. Very athletic player for his build and measurements. Probably would have, I think most draftniks had him as a first round prospect throughout the pre-draft process here. The Steelers obviously now with James Campen and Jari Evans will try to fast track him as soon as possible. I mean, you don't make a guy a first round draft pick without the notion of trying to get him in the starting lineup as soon as possible. The fact is, it just becomes a question of when, not if at this point. Now, look, it'll be interesting. We got a big question mark about Broderick Jones at this point. Will he be even healthy enough to open training camp as a full participant player? Will he have to go on active PUP? We're not going to get probably the question answered with him until this team shows up at Latrobe roughly 3 weeks from now here. You've also got Dylan Cook in the mix, who seems to be in line to get a lot of work at right tackle, or at least compete for the starting right tackle job throughout training camp here. At worst, Honitschor should open the season as the team's probably backup right tackle. At best, he will show enough during the preseason that gives the team enough confidence to put him out there as the starting right tackle in week one. And all of this obviously assumes that Fautano ends up going over to the left side, which appears destined to happen at this point. Look, it's up to Campen and Jari Evans to try to move him along as quickly as possible and get that rawness out of him. I think he just needs to he definitely needs to become a better run blocker right out of the chute. He needs to refine pass blocking opportunities. I won't be shocked if he's not the week one starting right tackle, but hopefully during the preseason we see enough of him and enough growth and development from his college tape that at least gives us the notion that A, he can step in right away due to injury, or B, as the season progresses, by the midway point, he becomes the starting right tackle for this team. So I think it's all up to how quickly they can develop him throughout the training camp and the preseason. We should see a ton of him, I would think, during the preseason at the right tackle position. I know there's been talk about, well, should they get him some left tackle work as well, too, potentially in case he has to be the swing tackle. I don't know if you want to put that much on his plate. It will be interesting to see how the coaching staff does handle him from a position flexibility standpoint moving forward into the summer and the preseason. Will he log any snaps at left tackle in any preseason game? We'll see. I don't have the answer to that. I do think they need to keep the plate relatively small with him. I would work him at right tackle. If you got in a situation where you got into the season and you needed somebody to swing, at least Dylan Cook has played over there on the left side and reasonably well on top of it there. So I think the questions are, how much left tackle will we see out of a Honitschor this summer, and how quickly can he fast track at the right tackle position?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I know Brian Angelico made the comment at some point during the spring and said that Ihanacho was going to play multiple spots at some point. To our knowledge, he was just at right tackle during OTAs, but could they mix and match and have some time where they get him left tackle work just to at least have that, to kind of get familiar with that again, because it's been, I think, since his JUCO days that he played left tackle. So we'll see. I just lost my train of thought. What I was gonna ask you, Dave. You said it was, inevitable that Ihanacho is going to start. Is that in reference to an inevitable at some point this year, or just at some point, next year? By next year, he'll be starting.
Look, you got to get your first round draft picks on the field as rookies. Plain and simple in today's NFL. I just think, and why would you draft a guy if you don't think that you can get him on
Yeah.
the field as a rookie? It is just my take on it. This isn't the old Dick LeBeau days, especially on the defensive side of football, where you had the amount of talent that you could essentially kind of redshirt a guy. You got to get first round draft picks on the field sooner rather than later. The only thing that I think that would prevent that from happening is Broderick Jones being healthy enough and just amazingly turning it around and playing to a level where you just can't pull him off the field. And I think the chances of that happening are very, very low. Dylan Cook is who Dylan Cook is. I think at this point.
Why do you say? I'm just curious. Why do you say that? Why do you say that Dylan Cook is basically maxed out?
I think he is, and I think the fact I think he did good to show that he could go in games, specifically at a non-normal position, such of him as left tackle. There, I just think he is what he is. He's not an overpowering run blocker by any shape of imagination. Although he was good as a pass protector last year, we have to keep in mind that how quickly Aaron Rodgers got rid of the football. On top of it there. So I think he is a backup in today's NFL. I think he's a quality backup. Once again, I wouldn't be shocked if at least initially he started the season as a starting right tackle.
Mhm.
But a guy with the Ihanacho's pedigree and athletic ability should be able to easily overtake a guy like Dylan Cook.
Yeah, he certainly could, and you'd expect Ihanacho, I'm with you, to probably start at some point this year. But I mean, Cook has 4 NFL starts. I think he can
Right.
grow a lot. I think he probably learned a lot about himself last year, and I think he can still be a better player. What that ceiling is, not what Ihanacho's ceiling is, but I don't think Cook is maxed out. If Ihanacho plays well this summer, defining well, however you want to define it, is he your week 1 starter at right tackle against Atlanta?
If he gets, much in the same aspect that we talked about Will Howard and being a backup role, if Iheanacho can give you confidence that he understands what's going on offense, and look, there, Aaron Rodgers. It was interesting to hear Adam Thielen talk about Aaron Rodgers on Sirius yesterday. There, Aaron Rodgers does not tolerate veterans or young guys not knowing what's going on any given play. So he that's going to be a chore in and of itself, is getting the confidence of Rodgers and the coaching staff throughout the summer here. So, but I mean, if he can do that and he doesn't look, it looks like he's grasping the offense, know his role, not having to kibitz with whoever his right guard is to what am I doing on this play, pre-snap and all like that. And if the play is above the line during preseason, then yeah, I mean the coaching staff has to have the confidence in him. Aaron Rodgers has to have the confidence in him as well. Is it totally out of the question? Especially if Broderick Jones isn't able to do anything this throughout the summer here, is it totally out of question that Ihanacho winds up being the week 1 starting right tackle? Absolutely not. Especially when you consider it really essentially Dylan Cook becomes the only competition at that time.
Right. Yeah, I think if Ihanacho plays well and has a good summer and looks like the first round pick he was built to be, he'll start out of the gate. Why would you not start him at that point? If he's your first round guy and he looks ready to play, what's there to even talk about? Now, will he play well and play consistently enough, of course, is the $1,000,000 question. And I think he's going to have to show a better upper half, a better punch, more consistent with his hands. That was the big thing I saw on tape. He's athletic, is all get out. They liked his aggressiveness. But can he just be, he's a segmented guy. The lower half looks great. The upper half, I think, needed some work and refinement. That's kind of the rawer part of his game, even though he does have a bunch of college starts, but just late to football overall. So that's the thing I'll be watching for, just his punch. Can he be able to make good first contact and get in the chest and not keep his hands too wide, not get his hands knocked down? Can he work independent hands? I don't know exactly how Camp is going to teach it, but Those are the things I want to watch for from Ihanachour this year.
100 snaps during the preseason at least, right? You
What would
gotta
be
get it. Gotta get
they'll
them some
play a
playing
ton.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many preseason snaps are there in a typical
So let's
3-game
say
exhibition.
200.
Yeah, maybe 100. I mean, it's just tough when you're competing with somebody. You kind of naturally lose a little bit of playing time there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly 75, 100 snaps. That sounds about right. Sure.
All right.
But yeah, that's the sky's the limit for this guy. They liked him for a reason. And again, we talk about the Mekhi Lemon stuff, and that was such a dominating story of Ihanachour that frankly overshadowed the Ihanachour pick. They liked Max Ihanachour. I'm sure there was a twinge of disappointment about losing out on Mekhi Lemon, who was going to be their pick if he was on the board over Ihanachour. But I think back to it was Bill Cowher on the McAfee draft show. And before having any inkling about Mekhi Lemon, as soon as Pittsburgh came on the clock, Cowher said they're going to take Ihanachour. And that was based on him talking with Omar Khan throughout that day that he was raving about Ihanachour. And so they really like this guy. And this is not just a fail-safe or plan B or panic pick or anything like that. They are big fans of Max Ihanachour.
Well, we set it out after the draft as well, though. Ihanachour and Mekhi Lemon will always be
Yes.
linked together, and fans of the Steelers will always be watching the play of Lemon and the play of Ihanachour moving forward.
Definitely. I'm going to write about this. I don't want to spoil it. I plan to write about it. I don't know exactly when. I found another story that was like not even not the first, but an earlier example of Pittsburgh being on the phone with a high draft pick, him being taken, them having to pivoting to another prospect instead. So I'm going to write about that. So not to relitigate the whole Mekhi Lemon stuff. It's all spilt milk, but this kind of thing has happened before, and Pittsburgh's come out on the other side with a good pick.
All right. All right. Look forward to that. All right. We got 2 more to cover here before we get out of here on this Wednesday.
Deshaun Jameson next on the list. He earned a bit of buzz last year and got a cup of coffee with some regular season snaps. A speedy corner, probably play in the slot this year and trying to stick as that maybe 6th cornerback in a crowded room.
Yeah, all told, Jameson played 17 special team snaps for the Steelers during the 2025 season. He didn't, however, register any stats during those 4 games and was mostly used on the punt coverage and kickoff coverage units. I think really the highlight of him was beating a double vice on the punt coverage units on one of the special team snaps that he played. Let's see, he originally entered the NFL with the 49ers as an undrafted free agent out of Texas in a couple of years ago, at least. It was signed by the Steelers to reserve future contract. He's now 27 years old. He enters training camp this year, having played 107 regular season defensive snaps and 166 more on special teams. He'll probably should enter training camp as a bit of a dark horse when it comes to his chances of making the roster, 53-man roster. He'll have obviously plenty of competition to win a backup spot as a backup corner because the Steelers are quite stout, or stouter obviously than last year at the position group, and that group obviously includes Dalen Everett, who was a 3rd round selection this year. He hasn't played a regular season defensive snap since 2023 with the Panthers. Even then, he only logged 107 of those snaps, with most coming as an outside cornerback. The Steelers, however, seem to view Jameson more as a slot corner based on where he played during the 2025 preseason, and it's hard to imagine that changing this summer here. The strongest suit with him is his special teams play, it feels like. That's why he was elevated from the practice squad 4 times throughout the 2025 season. His path to the 53-man roster this year, will probably mostly hinge on whether he can show he can be a top gunner or a punt coverage team on the punt coverage team during training camp. Once the preseason gets underway, because of the makeup at the top of the Steelers cornerback depth chart, he figures to see yet another player that'll get a lot of playing time on defense and special teams throughout the preseason, probably much in line with the 105 total snaps that he played during the 2025 preseason there. So we should see a lot of Jameson during the preseason here. His best shot once again. I think realistically, once the preseason ends, we'll be going back to the practice squad, just as he started the 2025 season.
Yeah, that seems like the path. It's just a crowded cornerback room. It's a pretty deep position group, but you never know. And I think Jameson did a great job to take advantage of injuries. Not that you ever root for injuries, but when Dante Kent went down, when Jalen Ramsey got dinged in camp. I mean, Jameson really went from playing 0 defensive snaps, maybe 1 or 2, to getting a pretty regular role in the summer, taking advantage of it, and then sticking on the practice squad, getting a call up when injury stuck. And you're right, that punt rep that he had against Baltimore to force that fair catch when Pittsburgh was punting out their end zone was a really key play. And the speed on him is legit, so can he build upon that? But probably practice squad for him to begin the year, and then hope for injuries. Hope, you guys know what I mean, to elevate him. But if an in-summer injury happens to somebody, which is certainly possible, and Marcon's talked about secondary being an oft-injured position, then Jameson may go from outside the bubble to being squarely on the bubble to compete for one of those last spots.
Yeah, I think where we'll have a lot of eyes on him is the play on defense. Obviously, in a slot cornerback role is what we expect, and then expect him to shine as probably a gunner on special teams. We'll be tracking the amount of snaps that he gets. He's going to have Danny Crossman, I think, definitely in his corner to have any legitimate shot at making a 53-man roster out of camp in the preseason.
And there is an open gunner spot where James Pierre left, and so you imagine Eccles and Everett and maybe Heidenreich. We'll get looks there and might have the edge. But if Jameson just goes out there and makes a bunch of tackles, he may really make this team give a hard thought to including him. So that's kind of his focus and aim this training camp.
Agreed.
All right, last for today, last on this list, Dave. Kevin Jabody Jr., the undrafted rookie free agent defensive lineman out of Syracuse, a guy that we've talked about as kind of a sleeper a couple times. So obviously a deep defensive line, no guarantee he makes it. Be battling very hard with Gabriel Rubio and others this year, but Jabody a name to watch, Dave.
Yeah, look, once again, not a very large undrafted free agent class, even when you throw in, the tryout players that, that have gotten signed and all. But I do think overall that the deeper that you get into his tape and look, 2 of those guys that were originally signed as undrafted free agents are already off the roster here. But I think Jabody, largest signing bonus of the group here, and I think the further you get into his college tape from Syracuse, the more you understand why. I think this is the undrafted free agent in this year's class that probably has the best shot at making the 53-man roster. All that said, he's got a tough road about him moving forward here. Primarily used as a B gap player at Syracuse. Even so, he did play up and down the defensive line throughout his college career. That did include him playing quite a bit outside the tackles. His college tape, I believe, showed him being above, roughly an average run defender and an above average pass rusher overall. Moving forward, I mean, you got Rubio, obviously part of this draft class. You got a few veterans vying to make the team as depth players. Dean Lowry, Asese Otomewo, Logan Lee, Anthony Goodlow, who I believe we've already profiled, and of course Rubio on top of it here. He's going to have to show during training camp he can play the run better, along with making a splash or 2 as a pass rusher. It's going to be a tough road for him. Is this team going to keep 6 or 7 defensive linemen on the 53-man roster? That will ultimately have a big say in whether or not he makes the 53-man roster. If I was betting on him, I would bet on him not making the 53-man roster at this point, and hopefully showing enough during the preseason to be a practice squad player. I do think he is the most exciting what's left of the undrafted free agent class at this point. It just can he do anything during the preseason and training camp? Can he show he can be stouter against the run? I would imagine we're not going to see him outside the tackle the way he played some snaps at Syracuse. I imagine he's going to be an A and a B gap player mostly throughout the preseason and all. But he's got a tough road ahead of him. But it should be an exciting one. I think we're going to see a lot of him during the preseason as well.
Yeah, should get a lot of second half snaps. You think it'll be a nose tackle, not defensive end in Pittsburgh's base 3-4?
I mean, I think he moved up and down the line enough that he's going to get looks. At how much actual base are we going to see during the preseason? I think he could potentially get some looks at nose tackle here, but I want to see just the versatility of him between the tackles in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think out loud about it right now. Who might be your nose tackles this summer? Benton, Black. Who would be maybe the third? Yeah, I'm trying to. You might be onto
I
something
mean,
there with Jabby.
they've tried to obviously put Lee in that role during previous preseasons. I mean, Rubio to me plays better, the closer he is to the center. I
So
think
you think he might
overall.
get nose tackle reps then?
I would. You got a lot of different flavors to choose from here, so it wouldn't shock me. I don't know how many. And once again, once you get into how much base. I mean, you tell me how much base do you see during training camp, and how much base do we see during the preseason as well too. I just think
A good amount.
you got a lot of different guys that you could throw in there and get looks at. Once again, I think the biggest thing with him is he's going to have to. I think we will see him move up and down the defensive line throughout training camp and preseason, and I'm more interested to see how he develops or plays against the run.
Yeah. So yeah, Benton, Black, maybe a little bit of Joseph Day, potentially Kyler Baugh probably gets nose tackle reps just given his kind of lack of a size. We'll see. It could be a little mixing and matching for Javity, but the point is, no matter where he's playing, just put on some good tape. I thought he had a good year last year at Syracuse. Was injured 2 years ago. Thought he had a breakout season last year. Really hot motor, and that's certainly evident with his game. A little bit of athleticism, a little more athletic in space than say a Gabriel Rubio, a little more well-rounded as a pass rusher, I would say too. But can you show that hot motor, be available, and just kind of show a little bit something against the run and the pass? That's going to be Jabody's mission. But I thought there was some good tape there, and certainly kind of just fits that Pittsburgh Steelers mold of good size, good length, hot motor. Kind of a little bit of everything as a defensive lineman. So just kind of building upon that will be key.
Had there been, if there were 8 rounds in the NFL draft, he probably pretty good chance he would have gotten drafted.
Yeah, just one of those guys that wasn't on my radar a lot because, and maybe again, shame on me. We got to go through before each draft and see how many guys just have the profile, height, weight, length of a Steelers defensive lineman. Because Jabody certainly fit, but really kind of came on strong with a healthy and better 2025 season at Syracuse. So yeah, I don't know if he would have been drafted or not, but certainly fits and scratches that itch Pittsburgh looks for. So I think he's got a chance to make some noise. But it's a deep defensive line group. If he's going to make the 53, they're going to probably have to keep 7, which they have in recent years. But new coaching staff, could they in theory keep 6 this year? That is possible. So if he's gonna make it, they're gonna have to probably keep 7. And there's a lot of competition with Rubio, Otomewa, who's not getting enough buzz. Lee, and the others.
All right, realistically, practice squad. I think you're looking at him.
Most likely, but could he outshine Rubio and they trade spots? It's not impossible. And of course, Rubio has to stay healthy. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dave. We'll save the other 90 and 30 you posted for the next show on Friday with Caleb Johnson, Cameron Johnston, and one Broderick Jones. So anything else going on, hit me. If not, we can get to a couple listener emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's hit one from Saquon Prey. Hey, Dave and Alex. Saquon from Maryland. Been listening for about a year now, and I love what you guys do. Best in the business. Thanks for that, Saquon. What would you all think about bringing in Bobby Wagner for a 1-year deal and cutting Malik Harrison? I think it's a clear upgrade. Wagner has been sitting out there for a while. Might be able to get him for a cheaper deal. He could play base package with Queen and sub out for Wilson on sub packages. He's always been viewed as a team leader, great communicator, and high football IQ. The most important of those 3 would be communication aspect, something Pittsburgh has struggled with on defense for a while now. Interested in hearing your opinions. Yeah, look, Bobby Wagner's been around this thing for a long, long time. He's kind of the linebacker version of what Cameron Hayward, right? Just every year you say Father Time's going to end up catching up with Bobby Wagner. Yet Bobby Wagner come late in the season is the guy that ends up being a core of a defense. The way he communicates and the way he plays. I get the sentiment here, but if you brought Bobby Wagner in at this point, it would have to be on a very cheap deal. Look, I mean, you could easily designate the money that you're paying Malik Harrison to go toward him. You're obviously not going to get anything out of special teams play out of Wagner. Can you rely on Wagner to be an every down player or a 700 snap player at this point? I think more so, obviously, in the 700 snap category there. But I understand the sentiment here overall. I just don't think, as far as plausibility, that it would happen other than, let's say, a guy like Patrick Queen going down to a serious injury, early in the summer or something like that. I respect Bobby Wagner's career. I understand why you would bring him up, being an unsigned guy at this point. I just don't think there's a plausibility aspect of it other than injury right now.
Yeah, I don't see it happening in the plausible factor, but even in the hypothetical, I just have no interest. What role would Wagner play? You have Wilson and Queen, and you want to give Wilson every chance to be a base and nickel guy. So and then, as you said, Wagner giving you nothing on special teams, and so he'd be just a pure backup bench guy, not playing. And unless Wilson struggles this summer, I just don't see what the point of bringing Bobby Wagner in would be, Dave.
I think Wagner will land with somebody at some point, right?
He also probably is waiting to see what spot makes sense for him and what could be his final NFL season. I know for a time he was very set on I'm just a West Coast guy in Seattle, and then what with the Rams, and that's kind of broken when he went to Washington. So that's maybe makes a little more sense of location. But I'm sure he wants to kind of feel things out and wait for an injury that might give him a better chance and clearer path to play.
All right, I got one from Brian Tellini. He says, "Hey, David Ox, which of these veterans would it be least surprising to see make a career comeback in 2026? Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Pittman Jr., Jalen Ramsey, or Aaron Rodgers? So, which of those veterans would it be least surprising to make a career comeback in 2026? The least surprising."
Well, I don't want to get into semantics, but what are Rodgers and Pittman really coming back from? I thought both had kind of met expectations and did their roles well last year. So I don't know if that's really like true comeback, unless you're saying like come back and return to their prime heyday, which maybe that's the scope of the question. I think I mentioned this with Ramsey. I still think he can play some really good safety, and kind of this maybe little reimagined role for him as sort of a slot safety hybrid, and with a full off season to sort of really settle in that safety position. I thought there was still some good tape that he had last year. So my first instinct hearing the names was to say Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, mine as well too. I mean, I think Jalen Ramsey has the opportunity and would be the least surprising to uh to make a huge impact for this team in 2026.
I mean, I think Pittman and Rodgers obviously can and need to make impacts, but I'm not sure. I don't know what they're really coming back from. I mean, I guess Pittman expanding his role again, Rodgers finding the magic with McCarthy again. But I don't expect Rodgers to be an MVP candidate or something like that. Do you think Pittman's going to get 1,000 yards this year? I'm skeptical of that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking the question a little too much, but that's my answer.
All right, I would agree with you there. A couple other things he has in here. He says, I agree more with Dave about Malik Harris's chances of making the roster. He says, I'd put it around 40%. And then he goes on to say, for Alex's article about the top freakish athletes in Steelers history, that's a tough task to complete, he says. But I'm also curious where you had Martavis Bryant. He says, to me, he was one of the freakiest players in recent memory, and I think he would have at least been in my top 5. He says, cool article, though. So, boy, I have Martavis Bryant, one of the great what ifs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he always used to say he glided like a deer, like an antelope when he ran, and was he that mean, you go back to, I remember that somersaulting
Yeah.
catch that he made against the Bengals in the back of the end zone and all. And boy, you had to like, to me, Marte, I don't know if I'd class him as a freaky athlete. More so, the thing when I think of Martavis Bryant is just the more of the what if. I think Martavis Bryant, had he kept his head screwed on when he was in his prime, could have became one of the premier deep wide receiver, had he been in the right offense and utilized and really dedicated himself to the game more. I think he could have became. Heck, there's an article somewhere on the site from many moons ago that I thought he had a potential becoming maybe, the kind of the new age Randy Moss. Probably obviously not to that level, but there was a time, especially not too long after his rookie season, it took him a while as a rookie to get in and start getting that playing time there. But boy, he hit the ground running with several touchdowns and explosive plays. To me, it was always man, what if with Martavis Bryant? Should he be top 5 freakiest athletes though?
Well, I think he does qualify as a freaky athlete, a guy that frame, how athletic, the long strider, explosive he was, the stuff he did at guys that size. You just don't see that. That's why you invoke sort of the next Randy Moss. Randy Moss was a freak athlete. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a tough list, and that's certainly worthy of putting him somewhere on that list. And so maybe shame on me for that. Is he top 5 with, because there was also an element of freaky athletes, but also guys that like displayed that freakish athleticism long enough in Pittsburgh. So there was kind of that. So it didn't get so obscure. Oh, this guy played in 3 games. He was a really good athlete, but not a great football player. Obviously, Bryant was a really good football player and had a fairly prolonged stint, relatively speaking, in Pittsburgh. Not, long as it could have been with the suspensions and stuff. So I don't know. You certainly could argue that. I think it's fine to make the point that about Martavis. It just there's so many players to put on that list. I mean, I had Woodson and Troy, and I think Faneca is still a freaky athlete. I think some disagree with me on that, but I think him and Levon Kirkland was, I think, the quintessential freak athlete for his size and athletic profile. So it's just a tough list to put together. I don't know if Bryant was productive, prolonged enough in Pittsburgh to kind of truly kind of fit the vision I had in my head of the list. But one of those great what ifs, as you said, and then just even as something as simple as what if the NFL didn't suspend for weed the way that they do, or they have stopped doing now, and that alone probably would have given Bryant a long NFL career.
All right, we'll take the first half of Alex Jacobs' question here. The second one's revolves around overs and unders of several players here, so it'd take too long to get that. But first of all, he says, "Hi, Dave and Alex. Thanks for all the work you guys do for Steelers Nation. Been listening in season for a while, but this is the first year I've been tuning in during the off season." He says, "I've learned a lot, not just about the Steelers, but about how football as a business works and the salary cap. Thanks, Dave," he says. All right, on to the question. Firstly, are you more excited to watch the O-line play this year or the D-line play? He says, "For me, I think the D-line will be the better unit, but I'm really excited to see some of our young offensive line develop under a new coach and hopefully turn into monsters they have the potential to be." That's a great question. Are you more excited to watch the O-line or the D-line play?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's excitement for both. I think it's a strength of this team is right down the trenches. If I had to choose, though, I would just say offensive line is kind of where my gut is taking me for how well I thought they played towards the end of last year. The wildcard game aside, I thought they were an ascending group, and just watching that front five come together under James Campen, I think will be fun to watch.
I would agree with you. I like the additions of Campen and Evans there. I'm interested in seeing how Fautano and McCormick go moving over to the other side. I'm interested to see Zach Frazier take another step in his progress of becoming one of, if not the best center in the NFL. And then you got a rookie that we're going to watch hopefully at some point in Hianachor. And then how's that right guard How's that right guard position going to shake out there? A lot of intrigue upon training camp getting underway as well too. Is Spencer Anderson going to get the role? Brock Hoffman, can Jennings Dunker get in there at some point and get snaps there? So, and I just think overall we know more about what we think. I think the defensive line will be, especially with the addition of Sebastian Joseph Day and Harmon in his second year, Hayward being Hayward. So even though I think you should be excited to watch both of those fronts play in 2026, I'm with Alex. I would choose the offensive line.
Yeah, there's still a lot to watch for the D-line. The second-year jumps that Harmon and Black can take will be really big. Cam Hayward continuing to defy the age odds. I think I had that daily Steelers thought. I think you saw it yesterday, Dave. Him, Cam Jordan, Calais Campbell, all still playing in the NFL, playing at a high level. Truly remarkable stuff that should not be taken for granted.
Yeah, look, still easily one of the top 10 defensive tackles in the league, and you can make a strong argument top 3, really, I think, when it comes to
What do you think he'll
Hayward.
rank when the NFL execs rank the top D tackles, which I think is upcoming? Where do you think Hayward will slot in at?
I mean, he better be top 5.
I'm not sure if he will be. There are so many good D tackles in the NFL.
Well, the thing is, you don't have a lot of youth really coming in right now to kind of rival some of those guys, I don't think, overall. I mean, just the body, the consistency that Hayward plays with, has got to put him in top 5, I would think.
I think he'll probably be 7 or 8, is my guess.
Okay.
But not saying that's right. I just think it's where he'll be. There are a ton of good D tackles in the NFL.
All right. We filled up an hour and 45 minutes there. We got through 6 90 and 30 series players. We covered other news and notes here. We talked about Joey Porter Jr. And also we'll see what Friday brings us as far as talking points go. And I imagine we will hit at least 6 more in the 90 and 30 series as we get closer to the start of training camp. Getting underway a little less than 3 weeks from, in fact, it was 3 weeks from yesterday, I think they report to Latrobe. So, in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora, follow the show at Terrible Podcast, email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. Welcome back, Alex, and
Thank you.
we'll be talking to you again on Friday. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.